You know what nobody tells you about space? It's boring as hell until someone tries to kill you. It gets real interesting real fast. My name is Marcus Kane, and I'm what you might generously call a freelance problem solver. Less generously, a gun for hire with questionable morals and excellent aim. Today, I was trudging through the crimson wastelands of Kaelara Prime, wondering why I'd accepted a contract that paid in promises and desperation. The planet looked like Mars had a bad breakup with a horror movie. Red dust everywhere, jagged rock formations that could slice you open if you looked at them wrong, and a sky the color of dried blood. Perfect vacation spot, really. All it needed was a gift shop selling "I survived the apocalypse" t-shirts. 3 days into my trek across this charming wasteland, I heard it. A sound that made my blood freeze faster than a politician's smile. High-pitched keening, desperate and raw. Something was in serious trouble. Now, any sensible person would have kept walking. Marcus Kane, however, had never been accused of being sensible. That's probably why I was trudging through alien hell instead of sipping cocktails on some beach colony. I followed the sound over a ridge of volcanic glass, my boots crunching on crystals that probably cost more than my ship back on civilized worlds. What I saw made me stop dead in my tracks. 3 creatures that looked like someone had crossed a saber-toothed tiger with a nightmare were circling something small and golden. They stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in midnight black fur with streaks of silver that caught the alien sunlight. Their eyes glowed like molten copper, and their fangs could have been used as industrial cutting tools. Kaelara Shadowmanes. I'd heard stories about these predators. Supposedly intelligent, fiercely territorial, and with a bite that could crush starship hull plating. The kind of creatures that made hardened Marines wet themselves and pray to whatever gods they still believed in. But it wasn't the adult Shadowmanes that caught my attention. It was what they were surrounding. A cub. Couldn't have been more than a few months old, if I was reading alien biology correctly. Golden fur that shimmered like spun sunlight, eyes the color of emeralds, and making the most heartbreaking sounds I'd ever heard. The little thing was trapped in a crevice between 2 boulders, probably fell in while playing and couldn't get out. The adults were trying to help, but their massive size worked against them. Every time they tried to reach in, rocks would shift and the gap would narrow. The cub's cries were getting weaker. Time was running out. Smart move would have been to walk away. These weren't my problems, this wasn't my world, and getting between a Shadowmane and its young was a guaranteed way to become a cautionary tale. But here's the thing about humans that aliens never seem to understand. We are stupid in all the right ways. That I set down my pack and pulled out my plasma cutter. Military grade, designed to slice through reinforced bulkheads. If I could widen the gap just enough, the moment I stepped into the clearing, 3 sets of glowing eyes locked onto me. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. The adult Shadowmanes stopped their rescue attempts and turned to face this new threat. The largest one, probably the male, took a step toward me. His growl sounded like a fusion reactor warming up, deep, rumbling, and promising a world of pain. His mate flanked to my left, while the third, maybe a sibling or pack member, moved right, classic hunting formation. They were giving me one chance to leave before they painted the rocks with my insides. "Easy there, big guy," I said, raising my hands but keeping the plasma cutter visible. "I'm here to help." The male tilted his massive head, and I swear I saw intelligence flicker in those molten eyes. These weren't just animals. They were people. Different people, sure, but people nonetheless. I pointed to the cub, then to my plasma cutter, then made cutting motions in the air. Universal sign language for "let me help your kid" before we all have a nervous breakdown. The 3 adults exchanged looks. Actual looks, like they were having a conversation I couldn't hear. Maybe they were telepathic. Maybe they just knew each other that well. Either way, after what felt like an eternity, the male stepped back, just 1 step. Far enough to let me work, close enough to turn me into human confetti if I made the wrong move. I approached the crevice slowly, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. The cub looked up at me with those huge green eyes, and I felt something twist in my chest. Universal constant. Baby animals could melt the heart of a neutron star. "Hey there, little one," I whispered, activating the plasma cutter on its lowest setting. "Let's get you out of there." The work was delicate. Too much power, and I'd cook the cub or bring down half the cliff. Too little, and I'd be here until the suns went nova. Behind me, I could hear the adults breathing. Each exhale sounded like a threat, and a prayer rolled into 1.15 minutes of careful cutting, sweat dripping into my eyes despite the cool air, and finally I'd widened the gap enough. I reached in, and tiny claws latched onto my glove with desperate strength. The cub couldn't have weighed more than 20 pounds, all fluffy golden fur and oversized paws. It buried its face against my chest, still making those soft, keening sounds. But relief now instead of terror, that I turned to face the adults, still holding their young one, and waited for them to decide whether I was a hero or lunch. The male approached first. Up close, he was even more impressive. His head was level with mine, and I'm not exactly short. Scars crossed his muzzle and shoulders, telling stories of battles I couldn't imagine. This was a creature that had earned his place at the top of the food chain through blood and courage. He stopped inches from me, so close I could smell his breath. Not pleasant, but not as bad as I'd expected, kind of like ozone after a lightning strike. Then he did something that made my heart skip several beats. He lowered his massive head and very gently nuzzled the cub I was holding. The little one mewed softly and reached out with tiny paws to touch its father's nose. The big male's eyes closed, and for a moment, the most dangerous predator on this world looked like nothing more than a worried parent finally reunited with his child. The female approached next, her movements more cautious but no less graceful. She sniffed at me, her wet nose brushing my arm, then focused on the cub. Her tongue, easily the size of my hand, carefully groomed the little one's fur while I held it. They were saying thank you, in their own way, with their own customs, but the meaning was unmistakable that I carefully set the cub down between its parents. It wobbled on unsteady legs, still shaken from its ordeal, but alive and whole. The family reunion was something to behold. Gentle nuzzles, soft rumbling sounds that might have been their version of purring, and the kind of tenderness that reminded you that love was truly universal. The third adult, the one I'd taken for a pack member, approached me while the family had their moment. This one was smaller, younger, with fewer scars but eyes that held a different kind of intelligence. Curiosity, maybe, or calculation. T sat back on its haunches, bringing its head down to my level, and studied me with an intensity that was slightly unnerving. Then it did something I absolutely wasn't prepared for. It spoke. Not in words I could understand, obviously, but the sounds were complex, structured, with inflection and meaning. Language. Actual language. The male looked up from his cub and responded, his voice deeper, but carrying the same linguistic patterns. They were talking about me. I was pretty sure of that. Then the female joined in, her voice higher but no less authoritative. Three-way conversation, and I was definitely the topic. I caught repetitions, emphasis, what sounded like agreement and disagreement. Finally, they reached some kind of consensus. The male approached me again, but this time his body language was different, less threatening, more formal. He sat, bringing himself down to a more manageable height, and placed one massive paw on the ground between us. The gesture felt significant, like he was offering something. The younger one moved to my pack, which I'd left by the rocks. Instead of investigating it, though, it carefully picked it up in its jaws and brought it to me. Gently, without puncturing anything important. The female picked up her cub, cradling it against her chest with a tenderness that would have made any mother proud. They were leaving, but they wanted me to come with them. Now, following a pack of apex predators into unknown territory was roughly as intelligent as juggling plasma grenades in a fuel depot. But the alternative was continuing my trek across the wasteland alone, with night falling and temperatures dropping toward freeze your eyeballs solid. Plus, I had to admit I was curious. How often does a human get invited to dinner by aliens that could eat him without using condiments? All right, I said, shouldering my pack. Lead the way. The journey that followed was unlike anything in my considerable experience. The Shadowmanes moved through their territory with fluid grace, taking paths I never would have seen. They knew every rock, every crevice, every shortcut through the volcanic maze. The cub rode on its mother's back, tiny claws gripping her fur while it looked around with the endless fascination of the very young. Occasionally, it would look back at me and make soft chittering sounds. I took that as a good sign. We traveled for hours as the twin sons of Kaelara Prime began their descent toward the horizon. The landscape gradually changed from barren wasteland to something more hospitable. Vegetation appeared, strange purple plants that looked like crossing a cactus with a Christmas tree. Water trickled from hidden springs, and the air began to smell of life instead of dust and desperation. Finally, we reached their destination, and I understood why they'd wanted me to see this. The Shadowmane settlement was built into the side of a massive cliff, carved from the living rock with precision that would have impressed human engineers. Multiple levels connected by carved steps and natural ledges. Caves that had been expanded and shaped into homes. Gardens where those purple plants grew in organized rows, and everywhere Shadowmanes. Dozens of them. Adults, juveniles, elders with silver-white fur and eyes like ancient stars. They stopped what they were doing to watch our small procession enter their domain. The male I'd helped led me to the center of the settlement, where a natural amphitheater had been carved into the cliff face. Other Shadowmanes gathered around, their conversations creating a low rumble that I felt in my bones. Then, from the highest level of the settlement, came a figure that made all the others look small by comparison. The elder was massive, even by Shadowmane standards. Her fur was pure silver, and her eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of accumulated wisdom. Scars covered her body like a map of ancient battles. But she moved with fluid dignity that commanded instant respect. She descended the carved steps slowly, deliberately, while every other Shadowmane in the settlement watched in respectful silence. When she reached the amphitheater floor, she fixed those ancient eyes on me. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about first contact, about intelligence, and about the vast universe we all shared. The elder spoke, not in the flowing language I'd heard from the others, but in perfectly clear, albeit heavily accented, human standard. "So," she said, her voice like distant thunder, "you are the human who saved young Kex from the stone trap." My jaw hit the ground so hard I'm surprised it didn't crack the rock. You speak human." I managed to stammer that a sound that might have been laughter rumbled from her throat. "Child, my people have been watching human space expansion for decades. Some of us have made it our business to understand your kind. The question is not whether I speak human. The question is whether you are worthy of what we are about to offer you." She gestured to the assembled Shadowmanes, and I realized that every eye in the settlement was focused on me. This wasn't just a casual thank you for helping a lost cub. This was something much bigger. My name is Kavin, voice of the first pack, guardian of the sacred grounds. The human you helped rescue is not just any cub. He is my grandson, heir to the leadership of this clan. The pieces started falling into place. The formal behavior, the elaborate procession, the gathering of the entire settlement. I hadn't just helped a random kid. Idisabalian royalty. By the ancient laws of our people, Thara continued, a life debt has been created. You have earned the protection and alliance of the Shadowmane clans. This is not a small thing, human Marcus Kane. She knew my name. Somehow she knew my name. Your reputation precedes you, Mercenary. We know of your work, your flexible morality, your skills. These things matter less to us than your actions today. You saw a child in danger and acted without thought of reward or consequence. This is the mark of true character. The crowd of Shadowmanes around us rumbled their agreement, a sound like distant avalanches. But Thara continued, and that single word carried weight that made my spine straighten. Accepting our alliance comes with responsibilities. Are you prepared to hear what we offer and what we ask in return? I looked around at the assembled alien faces, each one intelligent, each one watching me with varying degrees of curiosity, respect, and calculation. The cub I'd saved was perched on a ledge nearby, playing with what looked like a ball made of woven fibers, completely oblivious to the momentous nature of this gathering. "I'm listening," I said after Kavin smiled. revealing teeth that could have been used as industrial equipment. But there was warmth there, and something that might have been approval. Then let us begin with the truth about why you are really here, Marcus Kane, and why the Shadowmane clans may be your only hope of surviving what is coming. The suns were setting behind the cliff, painting the settlement in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the evening songs of the Shadowmanes, haunting melodies that spoke of home and family and belonging. That I had the feeling that my simple rescue mission was about to become something much more complicated and much more dangerous. But as I watched the cub-eyed save tumble around with its newfound playmates, their laughter echoing off the carved stone walls, I realized that some complications were worth it. After all, humans had always been suckers for lost causes and impossible odds. Time to find out just how impossible this one was going to be. The truth, as it turns out, was a lot more complicated than I'd bargained for. And that's saying something, considering I once had to explain to a Centauri Customs official why I was carrying 17 different types of explosives in my luggage. Thrakavin led me to a private chamber carved high into the cliff face, its walls covered with intricate murals that told stories I couldn't read, but somehow understood. The paintings showed Shadowmanes in battle, in celebration, in moments of triumph and tragedy. History written in stone and pigment. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a smooth stone ledge that had been worn comfortable by countless years of use. "And listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you will change how you see this galaxy." I sat, trying not to think about how high up we were or how far I'd fall if I made the wrong move. Thera settled across from me with fluid grace, her silver for catching the light from phosphorescent crystals embedded in the ceiling. "Your contract," she began, "the one that brought you to Kaelara Prime. Who hired you?" That was not the question I'd been expecting. Corporate security firm called Nexus Solutions. Routine salvage operation, they said. Recover some equipment from a crashed survey vessel. And you believe them? I believe their money was real. Everything else was negotiable. Her laugh was like rocks falling down a mountain. Honest, at least. "Tell me, Marcus Kane, what do you know about the hegemony?" My blood went cold. The hegemony was bad news wrapped in worse news and tied with a bow made of concentrated nightmare. A coalition of species that had decided the galaxy would be better off under their benevolent guidance. By force, if necessary. And it was always necessary. Enough to know they are not the kind of people you want showing up at your birthday party, I said carefully. Indeed, they have been expanding their influence into this sector for months. Kaelara Prime is rich in rare minerals that their war machine requires. They sent survey teams to map our defenses and catalog our resources. The pieces clicked together like bullets sliding into a magazine. The crashed ship I'm supposed to salvage was shot down by my people 3 weeks ago. Its crew was interrogating captured Shadowmane cubs, trying to understand our social structure and find our weaknesses. Her eyes blazed with controlled fury. They were using children as test subjects. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. And Nexus Solutions? A front company. The hegemony wanted that survey data recovered quietly, without their involvement being traced. They hired a human mercenary with a reputation for getting jobs done and not asking inconvenient questions. So I've been played, used as a cat's paw to help an alien empire prepare for genocide. The taste in my mouth suggested I'd been chewing on recycled sewage. "There's more," Thera continued. "The main hegemony fleet arrives in 4 days. 12 dreadnoughts, escort vessels, and enough firepower to crack this planet like an egg. They expect to find a primitive species ripe for conquest. Let me guess, they are in for surprise. My people are not the simple predators the hegemony believes us to be. We have technology, weapons, defenses they cannot imagine. But we are few, and they are many. The coming battle will determine whether the Shadowmane survive as a free people or become another footnote in their empire's expansion." She leaned forward, her ancient eyes boring into mine. "This is what we offer, Marcus Kane. Help us fight the hegemony, and you will have the eternal alliance of the Shadowmane clans. We will share our technology, our knowledge, our strength. You will become part of something greater than yourself. And if I refuse, then you're free to leave. We will not harm you for your choice. But know this, the hegemony does not forgive failure. When they learn you did not recover their data, they will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. Your only safety lies in their defeat. Great. Damned if I do, dead if I don't. Story of my life, really. What exactly are you asking me to do? I'm one human with a plasma rifle and a bad attitude. I'm not going to turn the tide of an interstellar war. Thera stood and moved to one of the murals, her claws tracing the carved figures. You underestimate what one human can accomplish, Marcus Kane. Your species has a talent for chaos that we have observed with great interest. She touched a section of the wall, and it slid aside to reveal a hidden chamber filled with equipment that made my eyes water. Weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Armor that seemed to bend light around itself. Technology that was clearly alien, but somehow familiar. We have been preparing for this war for decades, she said. But we needed one final component, a human perspective. Your kind sees possibilities where others see only problems. You find solutions that should not exist. In the center of the hidden armory sat something that made my heart race. A suit of powered armor, clearly designed for human proportions, but incorporating Shadowmane technology. It was sleek, predatory, and absolutely beautiful in its lethality. We studied your military history, your tactics, your innovations. This armor incorporates the best of both our technologies. Shadowmane's stealth capabilities, human adaptability, and firepower sufficient to level city blocks. I approached the suit like a man approaching his first love. The metal was warm to the touch, almost alive. Reactive camouflage rippled across its surface, and I could see weapon systems that belonged in a fever dream. There's a catch, isn't there? I asked. There's always a catch. The armor bonds with its wearer. Permanently. Accept it, and you become something more than human. Something new, but you can never go back to what you were. Of course, nothing in this galaxy was ever simple. What kind of more than human are we talking about here? Enhanced reflexes, improved strength, extended lifespan. The armor integrates with your nervous system, becomes part of you. You will be the first of a new kind of warrior. I stared at the suit, weighing my options. Stay human and probably die when the hegemony came calling. Or become something else and maybe live long enough to regret it. How long do I have to decide? The hegemony fleet will arrive in 4 days. We begin our preparations at dawn. If you choose to join us, you must decide now. The smart play was to walk away. Find a ship, get off this rock, and let the aliens sort out their own problems. I'd survived this long by knowing when to fold a bad hand. But then I thought about little Kex, the cub I'd saved. About his parents, who'd trusted me enough to bring me into their home. About Thera, who was offering me a chance to be part of something that mattered. And I thought about the hegemony, using children as test subjects and calling it research. Hell, I said, reaching for the armor. I was getting bored with being human anyway. The moment my fingers touched the suit's surface, it began to change. Sections folded open like a mechanical flower, revealing an interior lined with neural interfaces and bioadaptive systems. It was inviting me in, eager to begin the transformation. Getting into the armor was like being embraced by lightning. Every nerve ending lit up as the suit's systems integrated with my biology. I felt connections forming, pathways opening, capabilities awakening that I'd never imagined possible. The helmet sealed over my head, and suddenly I could see in spectrums that didn't have names. I could hear the Shadowmanes moving throughout the settlement, smell the mineral content of the rock around us, feel the electromagnetic signatures of their technology, that I was still me. But I was also something more. How do you feel? Thera asked, her voice coming through the suit's communication system with crystal clarity, and I flexed my fingers and watched the armor's reactive camouflage shift and flow. Like I could take on the universe and win. Good, because that is exactly what we were going to do. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and training. The Shadowmanes had built an entire military infrastructure hidden beneath their settlement. Weapons factories, defensive positions, and enough firepower to give a hegemony admiral nightmares. I learned to use the armor systems, to move with Shadowmane stealth, to think in 3 dimensions instead of 2. The suit amplified everything I was while adding capabilities I'd never dreamed of. I could leap impossible distances, survive in vacuum, and deliver enough firepower to level mountains. But more than that, I learned about the Shadowmans themselves. They weren't just intelligent predators. They were artists, philosophers, engineers, and warriors all rolled into one. Their society was built on honor, family, and the absolute conviction that freedom was worth any price. Young Kex became my shadow, following me around the settlement with the endless curiosity of youth. He'd chatter at me in the Shadowmane language, and somehow the armor's translation systems let me understand his excitement about the coming battle to TO him. This wasn't a desperate fight for survival. It was an adventure, a chance to prove himself worthy of his heritage. The optimism of youth, I suppose. Or maybe just the confidence of a species that had never known defeat, that on the 4th morning, the hegemony arrived. Their ships dropped out of hyperspace like falling stars, 12 massive dreadnoughts accompanied by a swarm of smaller vessels. They took up orbit around Kaelara Prime with the casual arrogance of conquerors surveying their new territory. The settlement's early warning systems lit up like a festival of death. Sensor readings, tactical analyses, target assessments. The Shadowmans moved with practiced efficiency, taking their positions and preparing for what was coming. I stood on the highest platform of the settlement, watching the enemy fleet through the armor's enhanced vision systems. They were beautiful in their own way, those ships. Sleek, deadly, and absolutely confident in their superiority. They were about to learn why that confidence was misplaced. "Attention, primitive inhabitants of Kaelara Prime," came the broadcast from the flagship. "This world is now under the protection of the Galactic hegemony. Resistance is futile. Surrender now and your lives will be spared." Thara appeared beside me, her ancient eyes fixed on the ships above. "Do you have any final words before we begin, Marcus Kane?" I grinned inside my helmet, feeling the armor's weapon systems coming online. "Yeah, tell them humans said hello." The first hegemony dropships launched from the dreadnoughts like a swarm of angry insects. They expected to find scattered tribes of primitive hunters, easy prey for their advanced technology and superior numbers. Instead, they found hell. The Shadowman struck first, their own ships rising from hidden positions in the planet's ring system. Cloaked vessels that had been waiting in perfect ambush positions. The enemy's first wave vanished in blooms of plasma fire before they knew what hit them. But the hegemony was nothing if not adaptable. More ships launched, spreading out in attack formations that would have overwhelmed any conventional defense. That's when they met me, that I launched myself from the settlement's highest platform, the armor's jump systems carrying me in a ballistic arc toward the nearest dropship. The pilot never saw me coming. One moment his craft was cruising toward the planet's surface. The next it was an expanding ball of superheated gas. The armor stealth systems kept me invisible to their sensors as I carved through their formation like a blade through paper. Each ship I destroyed sent debris raining down on the others, creating chaos in their carefully planned assault. But this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. The hegemony fleet responded with a kind of overwhelming firepower that had conquered a dozen worlds. Orbital bombardment turned the landscape into a hellscape of glass and fire. But the Shadowmans had prepared for this too. Their settlement was protected by shield generators that could deflect anything short of a planet killer. And scattered throughout the system were weapon platforms that had been disguised as asteroids and debris. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Shadowmane stealth technology against hegemony firepower. Ancient wisdom against modern arrogance. And in the middle of it all, one human in alien armor, proving that sometimes the best defense is a really good offense, that I hit them where they were weakest, when they were most confident. Supply ships, communication relays, command vessels. The armor systems let me move through space like a ghost, striking and vanishing before they could respond. The hegemony had expected to face primitive aliens. Instead, they found themselves fighting a guerrilla war against an enemy that could be anywhere and strike from any direction. That'd be why the end of the first day. Their perfect formation had dissolved into chaos. Ships fired at shadows, wasted ammunition on empty space, and generally made themselves look like the overconfident bullies they were. By the end of the second day, they were asking for reinforcements. By the end of the third day, they were retreating. The last hegemony ship disappeared into hyperspace as the twin suns of Kaelara Prime set behind the mountains. The settlement's defenders gathered in the central amphitheater. Exhausted but victorious, I stood before them, still wearing the armor that had become part of me, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pride, not in personal achievement, but in being part of something greater than myself. Thera approached, her silver fur marked with the dust of battle, but her eyes bright with triumph. It is done, Marcus Kane. The hegemony will think twice before threatening Shadowmane space again. This was just the first wave, I pointed out. They will be back with more ships, better tactics, and a serious grudge. Let them come, she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had just seen the impossible made real. We have something they do not. We have humans. Around us, the Shadowmanes began their victory songs, voices raised in harmonies that spoke of courage, sacrifice, and hope. Young Kex ran up to me, his green eyes bright with hero worship, chattering excitedly about the battle. I knelt down to his level, the armor's servos whispering softly. What's he saying? Thera translated, her voice warm with affection. He says you fight like a true Shadowmane. You want to know if you will teach him to be a warrior. I looked at the cub I'd saved, who had inadvertently saved me in return. Tell him I will teach him everything I know. But first, he needs to finish growing up. And you, Marcus Kane, what will you do now? I stood and looked out at the stars, where other worlds waited and other battles called. The armor's systems were already plotting possible courses, identifying potential threats and opportunities. I think I will stick around, I said. Someone needs to keep an eye on you troublemakers. Besides, the hegemony isn't the only threat out there. And humans have a talent for finding trouble, or trouble finding humans, Thera observed with what might have been amusement. That too, as the celebration continued around us, I realized that my life as a simple mercenary was over. I was something new now, something that had never existed before. Human and alien, individual and pack member, warrior and protector. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of empires and tyrants who thought might made right. But they were about to learn something that humans had known for millennia. Sometimes, the universe needed a little chaos to keep things interesting. And humans, as it turned out, were very good at providing exactly that kind of chaos. The war with the hegemony was far from over. But for the first time in years, I was looking forward to finding out what came next. After all, I had a cub to train, a people to protect, and an entire galaxy that needed reminding that freedom was worth fighting for. It was going to be one hell of an adventure.